Hi guys, it's Debbie, and today I'd like to give a complete explanation of Interstellar directed by Christopher Nolan. I wouldn't recommend watching this video if you haven't seen the film yet because it will contain spoilers about the whole plot. Interstellar is set in a close future, a time in which the Earth's vegetation and food in general is rapidly dying out because of a series of plant diseases with deadly consequences for the human population. Society has also changed its manner of organisation and its priorities as the world no longer needs skilled students, explorers, armies. Many work categories no longer exist and most of the population works on farming. For example, this film's protagonist, Cooper, is a former engineer and NASA pilot which now lives a simpler life on a farm with his family. Soon various odd incidents start happening on his farm. For example, the combine harvesters stop working, objects seem to fall without a clear cause, and an older drone flies very close by to the farm, as if something had sabotaged its GPS system. Cooper's daughter Murph is a bright spark and a science enthusiast, so under her father's encouragement, she tries to find a common scheme to all these events, writing down everything she notices. Then one day, after a particularly bad sandstorm, Cooper and Murph noticed that the sand had deposited in Murph's bedroom in an unnatural way, forming an uncommon pattern. Cooper soon manages to work out a set of coordinates from this pattern and sets off with his daughter Murph to see what they might reveal. The two soon discover that these coordinates lead right to a secret NASA facility hidden away from local prying eyes, as funding is now reserved to more necessary and urgent activities, not to exploring and studying. At the NASA facility, Cooper meets an old acquaintance, Professor Brand, with his daughter and other scientists. They all point out to Coop that the fact that he reached that secret hidden NASA facility can't have been casual, and that something led him there. Somebody left him that message in the sand. Cooper is very confused and skeptical, but the scientists keep on with their explanation, revealing that all the odd phenomena he had started to notice had actually begun many years earlier. For example, variations in gravity and the appearance of a wormhole in space. Now, in very simple words, a wormhole is a sort of shortcut. It is a sort of tunnel in space that could allow a spacecraft to approach very distant locations in the universe that would otherwise require decades to reach. The odd thing is that a wormhole is not a natural creation. As a matter of fact, it was placed there, it was created by somebody. Are there living creatures in space, future humans? Who knows? The fact is that it is there and would allow humans to reach new habitable planets and potentially save the human race from dying out. Years earlier, 12 brave astronauts had already travelled through this wormhole to explore potentially habitable planets. The only ones that sent a positive feedback back to NASA were Dr. Edmonds, Dr. Miller and Dr. Mann. So the time has come for a new team to travel again through the wormhole, inspect these planets and evaluate whether they would be suitable for human life. The only small problem with this mission is that these potentially habitable planets are located very close to Gargantua, a huge black hole, a very dangerous region of space in which the gravitational field is so strong that it can warp time. In easy words, let's say it creates a difference in time. This could mean that a time like 1 year on one of these planets could equal to years and years back on Earth, added to all the time taken to get there and get back. Cooper is still very confused and not convinced about this mission, but Dr. Brand insists that somebody led him there to complete this mission. So although he is reluctant, mostly because of the very long time he'd have to spend away from his family, he understands the urgency of this mission and agrees to leave. The scientists at NASA plan on potentially moving everybody from Earth onto one of these planets, but they still miss very important data to formulate a correct equation and physically move everybody out into space. That very important missing information could easily be found at the center of a black hole, but obviously nobody has ever been inside a black hole or even close to it, because it would result in immediate death. So for now, the scientists must rely on their limited knowledge and the data they have at the moment to formulate an equation. They plan on using the long time that Cooper and his team will spend on the mission to complete the equation in time. In case of failure of this plan A, there is a plan B, which consists of thousands of frozen embryos which could potentially create a new colony of human beings on one of these planets. Obviously, this is just considered a plan B because it would result on the death of everybody which is still on Earth, simply creating a new human race on one of these planets. Cooper sadly says a tearful goodbye to his family, although his daughter Murph begs him to stay, insisting that even the fallen objects in her bedroom form the word stay. But Cooper heads off anyway, leaving her just a watch as a present. Cooper and his team leave for the mission on board the Endurance. The first planet they travel to is Dr. Miller's because it is sending the most positive feedback. Dr. Miller's planet is very close to Gargantua. This means that every every moment spent on this planet equals to months and months back on Earth. So they plan on a swift mission, quickly approaching the planet and then immediately returning back onto the Endurance just beyond Gargantua's influence. But once they have landed on Miller's planet, they realise they have made a huge mistake because the planet just consists of an infinite stretch of water with huge waves which wipe out everything in their path and which also wrecked Miller's spacecraft, killing her. The team desperately tries to get off of the planet, racing against time, but they are repeatedly set back because of the waves. So by the time they leave the planet and get back onto the Endurance, years have passed back on Earth. So in proportion, Dr. Miller probably dies just moments before their arrival, although it seemed like years back on Earth. By now, Coop's family has grown up and adult Murph is working at NASA, but she is disgusted by her father's absence and his lack of communication, as the Endurance system doesn't allow him to reply to her. As the scientists have lost so much time on Dr. Miller's planet, they realise that they can't visit now both Dr. Edmonds and Dr. Mann's planet, and they must make a choice. Dr. Amelia Brand insists on travelling to Edmonds' planet as she feels it is the most favourable, but the rest of the team is against her, claiming that her judgment is purely based on her romantic feelings for Dr. Edmonds. And this is when Dr. Brand introduces a very interesting concept, which is the power of love. She complains that love can be considered a power just like any other. She says that just because we can't feel it, physically, tangibly measure it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or that we just simply haven't found the way to measure it, or that somebody else hasn't found the way to prove it. She describes it as the only force that is able to transcend time and space, allowing us to love people or concepts we haven't met or that are very distant from us, making it one of the strongest forces. So she insists that this feeling she has of Dr. Edmonds' planet presented a favourable environment might be for a bigger reason than pure intuition. But the rest of the team is still not convinced of Brand's thoughts and picks Dr. Mann's planet because he is still transmitting. During that time, they also receive a message from Murph back on Earth in which he explains that Dr. Brand died and confessed on his deathbed that there has never been a solution to the equation for gravity, and that he had lied so that Cooper and his team would leave on the mission, leaving the rest of the population back on Earth to die, creating a new colony in space. Murph believes that her father and Dr. Amelia Brand knew about this all along and had just decided to leave the planet anyway. Obviously, Coop and Amelia are distraught by this message, but decide to make the best out of their mission anyway and visit Dr. Mann's planet. When they land on Dr. Mann's planet, they find a very harsh environment, but which presents promising data. Dr. Mann leads Cooper to the area which he believes presents the best living conditions far away from the base camp. But during the hike, he confesses to Cooper to having tampered with the data just so somebody would come to visit his planet and bring him back home. At first, he had managed to remain strong and brave, but after a while, the loneliness had taken control, leading him to insanity. He then attacks and injures Cooper, kills Romilly by blowing up the base camp, and escapes on a spacecraft trying to dock onto the Endurance and flee away from his planet. Cooper, Tars and Amelia rush after him on another spacecraft, begging him to not try and clumsily dock onto the Endurance as it would heavily damage it, risking everybody's life. But Dr. Mann is unreasonable and inexperienced, and he crashes into the Endurance, sending it spinning away from the planned route and taking his own life in the process. Cooper manages to dock back onto the Endurance with an extreme maneuver, but by then they are all dangerously flying towards the centre of Gargantua, the black hole. The last hope of reaching Dr. Edmonds' planet is completely gone, and they are doomed to die out in space. But then Cooper has an idea, and that is of using Gargantua's gravitational field to push them, literally throw them towards Edmonds' planet. To do so, the weight of the spacecraft must be reduced, so Cooper and Tars eject themselves and leave Dr. Brand to travel on her own towards Dr. Edmonds' planet. Cooper and Tars prepare to die as they fall through the black hole, but during the plunge they find themselves in a strange place which we could call a tesseract, a sort of cube formed by beams of light. Now, normally we are only able to interact with a tangible world that surrounds us, height, width, and so on. We move around, touch and interact with the physical structures that surround us. For example, we wouldn't be able to interact with time and interact with it as if it were a tangible concrete structure. But in the film, it is now explained that other beings have learnt to interact with time as if it were something they could touch. Just like I can now reach out and push this camera over Other beings have learned to physically interact with time and warp it as they prefer. That's how they created the wormhole, and most importantly, how they created this tesseract, this place where Cooper and Taz are, which allows for people to interact with time. As a matter of fact, through the beams of light which surround Coop, he can see his daughter Murph's bedroom, and he sees her in different stages of her life, including her as an adult. He tries to shout out to her, to touch her, pushes on the beams, making books fall, begging her to not make him leave on this absurd mission, but he can't manage to speak with her. He even tries to send a message to her through the books in Morse code, so forming the famous word stay, but nothing seems to work. But then in his despair, he suddenly realizes that that structure had been placed there to help him complete his mission, with Murph as the chosen one, and as he is now inside a black hole, he can communicate the necessary data for the gravity equation back onto Earth. So what he does is communicate with himself in the past. So he creates the pattern in the sand, which then leads himself to go into the NASA facility and start all the mission which brought him there. And then he sends back all the data necessary for the gravity equation on the watch he had left Murph as a child. Back on Earth, Murph sees the hands of the watch moving and understands that her father is trying to communicate with her and understands that this is the data she needs. Again, if we follow Dr. Amelia Brand's string of thoughts, this could be the power of love that gave Murph that necessary last bit of hope and trust towards her father. As the mission is now over, the tesseract starts to unfold around them and Cooper faints, floating into space. But because of the difference in time, during the time that it took Cooper to complete the mission, fall through the tesseract, faint and float into space, Murph had already solved the equation and saved humanity, creating an international spaceship which saved everybody. So luckily Coop is found floating around in space and is brought onto the space station, where he finally meets his daughter Murph. But what about Dr. Amelia Brand? Well, it turns out she was right all along. Dr. Edmund's planet turned out to be the perfect one, with a perfect environment, and she is now living there on her own, colonising it with the frozen embryos. So who helped Coop and the mission all along? In the film, Coop says that they brought themselves there, meaning that paradoxically it was future humans that learned to work with time and create the wormhole and the tesseract. Maybe the frozen embryos from Dr. Edmund's planet, which in the future managed to work with time and paradoxically send all this information back to Earth. Or maybe other living creatures in space which decided to help humanity. Let me know about your thoughts on Interstellar with a comment here below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more movie related content. See you soon. Bye.